is an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Unspoiled, covering The Dark Tower, Book 6, Song of Susannah. Stanzas 3 and 4. Trudy and Mia, and whatever number 4 was called.
Susannah's Dogan.
Alright, let's go with that. In these parts, I finally get to see what's going on with Susannah, except I kind of don't, because I don't really know what's going on with Susannah, but at least I get to find out where she is and that she's okay, except she's totally not okay, and it turns out Dead is here too. There's a lot happening, guys. Welcome to Unspoiled.
At least we get to hang out with Susannah.
That's, finally. Fucking finally. That's all I've been wanting. Welcome to the show, everyone. I'm Natasha.
I'm Miles.
And yeah, these two, it starts off from Trudy's perspective. She's just some poor sap in the wrong place at the wrong time when Mia comes through.
It was kind of funny to me to reread this and be like, oh shit, all this and we're still not quite with Susannah yet.
Right.
Because we start off with this Trudy woman.
But it's at least better than, because I had been worried that Trudy was going to be yet another manifestation of a personality.
I recall.
So at the very least, it's not that. So I was willing, once I realized that Trudy was another person, to go with it, because at least Susannah's name was in the title of the stanza, so I knew she'd show up.
Right.
And I do really like it when King does this, when he jumps into the perspective of some other person who's just kind of on the sidelines watching something incredibly weird happen.
It's a fun device in general, I think. Mm-hmm. I really enjoy it when authors do this. Like, I like the jumping into the perspective of some random dude who's experiencing, like, the side effects of whatever's going on in the main storyline. Mm-hmm. It's always something I enjoy, and King does it particularly well. Yeah,
especially like in the third book. Is it the third book? Drawing of the Three. When
that's number 2.
Is that's 2? Oh, yeah. See, it says 3 in the title, so I feel like it has to be 3. When Roland is inside of Eddie's body and the other dude's body, and people are like interacting with him weirdly, or the stewardess, flight attendant.
Yeah.
Is like keeping an eye on him. I feel like we haven't had that in a long time.
Yeah, I
mean, is that the last time that's happened in that book?
No, it can't be. I mean, okay, we got the prologue in the last book from T.N. Jafford's perspective, which was kind of ish that.
Okay.
And then, I mean, I guess it kind of is, because we really haven't been hanging around like regular people.
I mean, T.N. Jaffords wasn't on the sidelines for something crazy happening. It was just his POV of his own life.
That's true. He was a more major character than someone like Trudy.
Yeah.
Or the stewardess. Yeah, I think it actually is the first time since then, at least since that book, because we've spent for the most part, we've spent the last 3 books in Midworld. Mm-hmm. And not in, except for like occasionally going Todash and whatever, and not in New York. And I think this is the first time we've been back there, and I believe this is the first time he's done this. Okay. In this kind of way. Yeah.
Yeah, so I missed it. And it does seem like New York is the place to have this kind of thing, because it's going to be POVs of people that we can relate to more.
Yes.
Immediately. And they're going to be seeing some weird otherworldly shit. And I really enjoyed this, actually. The timing of reading this chapter was really funny, because just last week I recorded a Dresden Files chapter with Rashawn, and there is an atheist Knight of the Cross in that one.
Okay.
And he was literally given a holy sword by a archangel. and yet he remains atheist. He says, perhaps you could argue that I'm agnostic. And Dresden is like, how the fuck does that work? And he's like, well, I don't know. Maybe they're aliens, or maybe I'm just mad.
Right.
And it made me think of a conversation that I had with Brendan where he was basically shitting all over anybody who claimed to have experienced anything supernatural, from UFOs to ghosts to whatever. And I was like, so do you think everybody's lying or what? And he's like, oh, they're either lying or they just are delusional in some way or mistook something. And I'm like, okay, so if you ever saw something, what would your reaction be? Do you think that you'd start believing, or would you assume that you had made a mistake or were delusional? He's like, oh, I would think I was losing my mind. He's like, I wouldn't for a second believe that what I saw was actually happening. I would 100% think that I was losing it.
Dude, I don't buy it.
I don't buy it either, Miles. I agree with you.
I mean, Haunted Pizza Hut, guys.
Listen.
Is all I'm saying.
That shit was crazy.
That shit happened.
If y'all jumped in more recent episodes, I don't remember what episode that's in, but start from the beginning, folks, and wait for that fucking story to be told, because it is worthwhile.
Or if you want to see a more heavily dramatized version of that story that is true, but, told in a more previously written out fashion, you can go check out the October edition, the Haunted episode of the Odyssey Storytelling Podcast.
Right, I forgot that you did it on there too.
Yeah. Anyway.
So, yeah, I enjoyed this description of Trudy as being somebody who is not only hard-headed, but knows she's hard-headed and is proud of being hard-headed.
Super
and uses
proud
that
of it.
as her, gimmick, basically.
Yeah, she's like a really ambitious career woman who works for this law firm, right? And is trying to... Basically, it's very clear that she wants to become a partner. She's got big goals. And yeah, I think that's wrapped up in kind of the perspective it takes to be this sort of really cutthroat, ambitious woman or person in general is, kind of no time for this UFO bullshit. So when she's walking down the street and she sees Susannah appear out of midair.
Yep.
And then grow legs with white feet attached to them.
Listen, I don't know what to make of this. I got nothing. I've been trying to think, is there somebody that she's just borrowing from somehow? I don't know. I mean, we find out... We don't find out, but there's an implication that Mia has, quote, friends...
Right.
That are helping her out somehow. And I guess I'm assuming that these creepy fucking friends are grabbing somebody else's legs for her to use somehow.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a kind of a weird thing to be able to do. Is Mia white? Is that what's going on? Because I guess there's no reason for us to know that except for Jake being in the dream with her that she was having and watching her.
Right.
And I don't think Jake says anything like that, does he?
He definitely doesn't say that she's white. He does, but I don't think he doesn't say anything either way. It's implied that she still...
Looks like
it's
herself.
kind of implied that she still looks like Susannah.
Yeah.
But that's never really stated.
But you'd think that if he felt like it was Susannah, but it was a white woman, that he would mention that.
True.
When he talks about it to Roland later, right?
And when he talks about it to Susannah, I assume at some point when they all talk together, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you would think that.
If it does turn out that Mia is white, I'm going to guess that Stephen King just started this book and was like, hey, you know what, actually, and just did it without really thinking about that.
Yeah, I mean, you can make, I don't know, stuff like that, if that does turn out to be the case, you could make, some kind of, you could do workarounds. You could make headcanons and be like, well, maybe Susannah saw her that one time as herself because wasn't far enough along in the pregnancy or something. You can always make justifications for it.
Right.
But, Yeah, I mean, authors do this all the time. But yeah, I remember when I first read this, I was like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah,
we had already started the Dark Tower chat, the Facebook chat, where I was talking to people who had already read the book and like updating them on where I was and what I thought of shit as I went along. And we got to this part, and they were like, "What do you think about the feat?" And I was like, "Honestly, I have no clue. Like, I got nothing."
Yeah, I mean, it's very unexpected. It's very King-like, too. You know, for him to just be like, "Oh, hey, here's this weird curveball." And it's not necessarily... It's not something that's necessary to the story to make it interesting, but it is something that is kind of just a fun, like, look what I did.
I know you're not the biggest role-playing game person, like D&D person in the world, Natasha.
I'm not.
But I've spent a significant portion of my life playing those stupid games. And I'm sure a lot of your listeners have as well. And I was thinking about it the other day, and it's King is like, I think one of the reasons I like King so much, and specifically one of the reasons I like Dark Tower so much, is because it often plays out like someone's running a D&D game like the way I would run it. Because some people, really like are strictly in accordance with the rules, and everything's got to be planned out first, and like, oh well, how does this work within the system? Whereas when I run games for people, it's more like, oh yeah, this happens. It just does.
Okay.
Just because this will move us forward narratively. Whereas like, I have a really good friend who we're playing a D&D game that he was running like yesterday, and like, I think we spent half an hour in like this random cow pasture because like we were going through this area where there would be cow pastures, and we had to like make rolls to climb the fence and shit. Okay. Whereas like I would be like, okay, you get over the fence. You know what I mean?
Got you. Yeah.
So anyway, random.
No, I do know what you mean. That's something that that I didn't really understand how that aspect of the game could even be played, because a lot of people listen to role-playing game like podcasts and stuff to get ideas on how to handle different things, and
hopefully they listen to Extraordinary League.
There you go. But when I started playing, I never checked out any podcasts like that. I hadn't played before. I had no idea how the parameters even worked, and I regret that I didn't know more, because I would have like dug into it more, I think. Mm-hmm. Instead, the first time that I played, the DM was much more like, so you get over the fence, like you're saying. And to a first-time player, that doesn't mean anything. Like if you're somebody who's experienced in it, I could see it just being like, oh, it's fine, we'll just move on. But if you don't really get how the game works, and that you can just kind of invent whatever on the fly, just as long as it makes any sort of sense. Yeah. I think I would have had a lot more fun with it, but it just kind of felt perfunctory, and so my playing was kind of perfunctory and not really as much fun as it could have been. Yeah,
I think it depends on the kind of person you are too. It's like, I can definitely see you, Natasha, as being sort of the person who are like, all right, what are the rules? Like, give me the mechanics and I can really dig into this. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, lay it out in front of me. What are the numbers? I will make this work for me. Whereas some people are just like, tell me a story. You know what I mean? And I'll participate in it. So, anyway. King definitely... I don't know. I think one of the reasons Dark Tower really works is because the idea meshes super well with his writing style. Right. Like, we're world hopping, shit is bleeding together, things are happening for no apparent reason, and the explanation can always be like, well, Ka, or, or like, it's just the way it was meant to happen, or something, Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, anyway... We have Mia here, and she stands up on her new legs with the white feet and demands Trudy's shoes.
Yeah, this was something. I really like the fact that Trudy sees her legs basically inflate inside of the legs of her jeans that are otherwise looking sort of like, as he puts it, like sloughed off snake skin.
Yeah, her legs pull an anti-Tom Brady.
Oh.
Anyway, moving on.
You're a monster.
Sorry.
So that was really like a fun little cap to the end of something that is already incredible. And I mean that in the most literal sense of the word.
Yes.
That you cannot credit it.
Right.
She tells you the story and you're like, yeah, whatever.
It cannot
Then
be
she's
credited.
like, no, but I saw her legs inflate. Okay, lady.
Also,
Yeah,
her feet
that's
were
fine.
white and the rest of her was black. Yet, of course they were.
The fact that she calls the cops and tells them the whole story is
I kind of
really
love that.
like it's a combination of incredibly frustrating as a reader and incredibly understandable as somebody who has just had a life-changing experience and is not thinking straight. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It
Yeah.
kind of, not to bring something up that's so controversial at the moment, but it's kind of reminding me a little bit of like the Aziz Ansari story that's going around right now.
Ha.
A woman shared her encounter with Aziz Ansari on a date, and he was incredibly demeaning and aggressive and gross to her. And she tried to tell him to back off, but she stayed at his apartment. There are many reasons for this, but I think the most understandable one is that he kept saying that he was going to back off and making her think that it was safe. And then he would wait just long enough that her defense was down, and then he'd try again.
Yeah, he kept saying, like, I don't want to do anything that makes you uncomfortable.
And then he'd shove his fucking
yeah.
fingers in her mouth.
Yeah, that's right.
So, it's one of those situations like that where from stepping back from it, you're like, well, why didn't she do this? Why didn't she do that? People don't have the distance from the situation that you do when you're hearing about it third hand, like 2 years later. That's why. So this woman, I mean, I would put money on her never having had to file a police report in her life, probably. And if she did, it was probably for some petty shit like neighbors with music too loud or something, because she seems like the type.
Yeah, maybe your house gets broken into once, something
Maybe,
like that.
yeah. But, yeah, this moment with, like, as a reader where you're like, don't tell them, they're never going to listen to you.
Yeah.
Even before that, to be honest, why are you calling the cops? Right? Like, if you really think this person materialized out of nowhere, that their feet inflated and that they were white, but the rest of them was black, you gotta know there's not much the police are even going to be able to do were they to believe you at all.
Well, I mean...
But, what option do you have?
Yeah, and I think she's clearly not thinking straight, for one thing. And for another thing, I think that it's kind of part of her little mini story here. Because, this is about how a woman who used to mock people who claimed they had seen unbelievable things saw an unbelievable thing and was then mocked. And you just can't do that unless she tells somebody.
Yep.
And it makes sense for it to be the cops.
It she's a lawyer.
Yeah.
She understands the process by which things are done. So what do you do when you're panicking and you're that kind of person? You fall back on the comforting status quo that you can depend on during turbulent moments, except that you can't. Because what happened to you is distinctly outside of the status quo.
It helps when you get a sexy cop, though.
Does it? Does it help? Because it seems like it doesn't help her too much. I love that she's like, hey, I'm going to tell him this crazy fucking story, and then I'm going to ask him out to dinner. I'm like, girl, that's not going to go the way you want.
What do you think? What do you think this cop would have done if you had told him, like, dude, pretend to believe her, you'll probably get a date out of it?
This is a cop who has dealt with plenty of probably off their rocker people and is not going to touch that with a 10-foot pole.
Probably true.
He's gonna see the giant danger sign, giant yellow sign with orange cones in front of it. and be like, "Nah, I'm good, thanks."
We should say that at one point during her encounter with Mia, during Trudy's encounter with Mia, Susannah does surface for a moment, asking for help, but it is immediately pushed back down. Which is interesting because of what we see later in terms of Susannah kind of not necessarily taking control, but like, you know, at least it seems like it's half and half a little bit later on.
Right, yeah.
I think right now what I feel like is happening is kind of the pregnancy and the intensity of the labor and like what Mia's going through is kind of forcing, like her desperation is like forcing her to the front. Mm-hmm. And once Susannah locks that shit down, it's like, no, okay, now we're not dealing with that, and now you have to deal with me. But we'll get to that later on. I just thought it was interesting that in the beginning here, Susannah can only manage a couple of seconds in the front of her own body.
Yeah, I thought it was weird too how she like pounds herself on the forehead.
Yeah.
Like it's a scene change.
I love what Trudy says is she'd seen stand-up comedians do it when they're changing changing personalities, which I thought was great.
Yeah, the whole thing was really surprising because I didn't expect to be seeing Susannah again from the outside. Uh-huh. I thought if Susannah popped up, it would be because we were inside Mia's head.
Right.
And instead we actually get to see that she can come forward still, which was really, I didn't think she'd be able to. And I certainly didn't think Detta would still be around.
Yeah.
That one surprised me a lot. Yeah.
That's fun. Detta is definitely still around. That's my favorite part of the chapter.
Yeah, like, because Detta comes forward a little bit when she's about to fight the wolves, but I thought it was like her remembering what Detta, and like thinking what she would have said. I didn't know that it was kind of really Detta just piping up from the background.
Well, Detta had been folded into this new personality. Like, Susannah Dean is part Detta by nature.
But we never see Odetta around.
Yeah, and that's interesting. I feel like Odetta is kind of... It's, I don't know. The way I think about it, it's like Odetta is what this person is once Detta is gone. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, we're not going to get her because Detta's always here. Occasionally, Detta will, kind of stick her head up and help out, like we saw in the Wastelands when she figures out the Prime puzzle with Blaine.
Right.
And we definitely have seen her kind of like, we've heard her voice a couple of times every once in a while. But she's never come up for a speech before.
Yes.
So, and again, that's I really want to talk about that later because it's one of my favorite things. But right now we have Mia, and she's threatening to cut Trudy's breasts off if she calls the cops. Incidentally.
Oh, yikes!
And Trudy says, "Good day to you, madam. Enjoy those shoes. Wear them in good health."
Oh my god, I love that she answers that way. It is just so fucking unexpected again. And this is what I mean, where somebody goes through something and they respond in a way that you just cannot fathom from the outside. You put yourself into a situation mentally where you're getting mugged and you think about how you would respond, and that is not what you think. And I'm sure if you had asked her how she would have responded if somebody mugged her, the opposite of this is what she would have expected from herself.
Absolutely.
But, that example about what if you got mugged by a woman who materialized legless out of thin air and then grew legs in front of you that didn't match the rest of her body, and then she mugged you.
I'd be like, here you go. I really think I'd be like, no, sure, you go ahead. You take this. You go away so I can process the fact that you've ever been here.
Right?
Oh, man. So Trudy walks away, wets her pants, unfortunately.
Yep.
Just, the thought of, that woman behind her, stalking her. And then we have the whole thing.
I felt bad for her about that part, because that's just humiliating. Because then you have to walk to the office looking like that, and everybody's going to look at you and know exactly what the fuck happened.
I know, it's the worst. Incidentally, Susannah and Mia appear in front of, I don't know the proper pronunciation for this, but it's 2 Hammarskjold Plaza? Hammarskjold?
Does that mean
Hammarskjold?
something?
Is it maybe Hammarskjold? Well, that doesn't mean anything, but we do say that the folks who worked there jokingly called it the Black Tower. So,
OMG, I don't know how I missed that. I totally, did not even remember. I don't remember that.
Oh, really?
Oh, my God,
Yeah.
I'm stupid. I didn't even read that.
They say it twice, yeah.
Ugh, what a I'm mad at myself. I was just so caught up in other things.
No, I know. Yeah, it's the Black Tower. It's fine.
What's the big deal?
So then we get this whole thing. She calls the cops. She tells this kind of cute guy her whole story, and he, of course, gives her all the reasons why it was perfectly normal, and she kicks him out of her office.
Right. Which is pretty great.
Yeah, I agree.
She should just get out.
I like that it says, she forgot all about asking Officer Antasi if he'd like to go out to dinner with her. In fact, she threw him out of her office.
Yeah, I mean, once you get to the point where you realize somebody is just humoring you, it's just kind of humiliating.
Yeah. So then, later that day, Trudy walks back toward the place where it happened. And hears this humming sound. And realizes that it's actually singing.
Yeah.
And then this dude who's next to her, when she says out loud, "That's not humming, that's singing," this dude says, "Yeah, I can hear it too. And when I was a young man, I had the world's most terrible case of acne, and I think coming here cleared it up somehow."
That's the same guy that talked to Eddie, right?
Is it?
Yeah. Remember when he comes back and he's got his hair tied back to look like some Brooklyn artist?
Oh, yeah.
And some guy stops, so it's the same dude. But
God,
30 years later.
I think you're right. I think wow, I didn't even put that together. That's great.
I'm so glad that I missed something big and then you missed something big. Yay, I feel better.
Yeah, that was good. So it seems like they built this plaza, the Black Tower, on that vacant lot, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So,
which is messed up, and I hate it.
Yeah, so like,
it's like
I
we're
don't
in
know.
the darkest timeline or something.
I mean, listen. We now are in the darkest timeline.
We think. I mean, maybe somebody's darkest timeline phone is what sent out that missile launch.
I will know.
Call it? Did you see that thing?
Yeah, I did. That's fucking horrible.
God.
What the shit, people? The thing about Hawaii, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We'll know, though. The first weekend in February, we'll know if this is the darkest timeline or not. Because I swear to God, if the Patriots win another Super Bowl, then this is it. This is the one. But...
oh my God. Every time somebody mentions the Patriots, I just remember that, in Connecticut, we don't have our own team anymore.
Yeah.
We used to a while ago, but the Patriots are the only one. And yet, I still hated them when I lived there. It was just insufferable. And I moved down here, and people would be, around me and being like, "Oh, the Patriots." And then they'd be like, "Sorry, I know that they're..." And I'm like, no. It's fine. But...
I just have to, I don't want to hijack this or anything. I just have to say this out loud on something that will be, put out on the air, okay? And I want to say this in particular to Jamie Smith and everybody else. I think Nate's a Patriots fan. Everybody else who's out there. Look, guys, I don't care if they're your team or not. You're not allowed to root for them this year. Nobody is allowed to root for the Patriots this year. It's not. The other three teams are all these great stories with these quarterbacks who weren't supposed to be there, and all these teams missed the playoffs last year. And I swear to God, none of you are allowed to root for the Pats. Just don't do it. Just don't do it.
That's
You've
funny.
won enough.
I get what you mean, though. There comes a point where it's like, you know, there's a bunch of people. If you take one of those online quizzes and they're like, which of these 5 things do you pick? And they're trying to like figure out what flavor of soda would you be? And they're like, here are 6 celebrities. And there's a bunch of weird B-listers and then Beyonce. And they're just like, why'd you do that? Come on. Everybody's going to have the same result in the end of what soda they are. Do you have no integrity about this test?
Oh my God, that's the best. Have you no decency?
I came here for science. Anyway. So.
Where the fuck were we?
She reports, she kicks a cop out, and then she gets in the conversation with the guy about the acne, and he tells her about the singing, and then she is really shaken up still and sees a bench in this park nearby and goes and sits there.
Yeah.
And she notices a newspaper in the garbage that is folded in the exact way she folds hers when she puts it in her bag, and realizes that the woman who stole her shoes came here and sat down and put them on. And we pretty much go, I think, straight from there into the flashback to what Mia did when she sat down here, right? I think, or it's a flashback really to Mia for a second, and then we go to Susannah trying to remember what happened because her memory is all fucked up now.
Yeah, correct. So Trudy goes and sits by this big this turtle, this little metal turtle sculpture, or I guess big metal turtle sculpture. And there's a little piece of graffiti that says, "See the turtle of enormous girth," which I like.
Yes. I was happy to see that back.
Yeah.
I just think enormous girth is a hilarious thing to have, like, be part of your, like, slogan for your books, too. Like, side-eyeing King for that one a little bit, but also kind of want to high-five him.
Just, like, want to try it in the bedroom someday. Like, hey, babe. See the turtle of enormous girth.
That really only works if you're not circumcised, though.
That's true. Wait, if you're not circumcised, or if you are?
No, if you're not circumcised, yeah. There's a little turtle head poking out.
I thought it was... Anyway. I don't want to get into an in-depth penis discussion right now. Anyway, so yeah, she just kind of sits there. She feels like she's kind of losing it. Something is very wrong. It's tipping was the word that came to mind, but she would not say it, as if to say it would cause the tip to become a topple. Mm-hmm. So
I like that too.
And then, of course, as we have done every time, we should read the stave and response at the end of the stanza. Should we not?
I don't want to do this.
That's fine.
No, I'm not participating in this charade.
So dumb. Kamala, come key.
Why are you doing this to me? Why? What have I done to you, Miles? How did I hurt you?
You didn't remember. You missed the Black Tower thing. That was it.
That's true.
Yeah. So we do go straight to Susannah here, and we go straight into Susannah remembering the fight, right? Like, that's basically what happens.
Yeah.
She remembers that, you know, she was there, and Mia was there with her, like, cheering them on.
I really like that, because at first she's like, Mia was there supporting her.
Yeah.
Or something like, and then she's like, that's not really quite fair. It was more than that. Just kind of giving her, like, some credit over it, which I thought was...
Yeah, and she also points out the robots were more than that.
Yeah.
They were more than robots, much more, and we killed them, rose up righteous, and killed their asses. And then...
I want to know what that's about. Is there, like, a ghost in the shell?
And immediately after...
Oh,
wait, I'm not dignifying that. I'm not doing it.
You just rode right over that. All right. Please continue, sir.
Sorry, I've just totally been derailed. Anyway. So, the moment the fight ends, then the labor comes back, and Mia needs help. And she just, like, immediately... And Susannah finds it totally impossible to just ignore her. And she does something. We find out later a little bit more of what she does here. But she goes back into that little place in her mind, the Dogen.
Yeah.
And somehow does something to like, delay the labor, right?
Yeah, this is bananas.
Yeah. And I love... There's an explanation for this coming later, which is something I've been waiting for us to get to, because I really want to talk about it.
Okay.
So, she remembers going, down, like, she basically remembers everything that Roland and Eddie found out she did, right? She took the chair as far as she could go, at which point it crashed, and it couldn't do anything. And she remembers trying to stop Mia from removing her wedding ring from around her neck.
Yeah.
Which... it says here Detta comes forward. It says here Detta comes forward, and actually, like, beats Mia back. Mm-hmm. She defeats her right then and there. But Mia says, you have to take this off.
Mm-hmm.
Because
they'll be able to smell it.
Yeah. There's people coming after us, and if Eddie comes after us too, then they're going to be able to smell him. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So she basically lets her. She does it herself, actually. She takes it off herself, kisses it, and leaves it there.
Yeah. Yeah, this is awful because when she does this, she is not aware yet that Mia is intending to take the ball through with her.
Right.
So she's doing this feeling confident that Eddie is going to find it and be able to follow her and understand that she's all right. Mm-hmm. And she is mistaken. We'll see.
She is. And again, she finds herself briefly in this, when they go through the cave, through the door, rather, she finds herself once again in this, like, weird, like, control room, which looks like Jake's description of the Dogen across the river.
Yeah, it looks like his description if you have never actually seen modern tech before.
Right.
Because everything is recontextualized into what she knows about computers and television screens and dials and whatever. So her version is vintage. It's retro.
Sure. So yeah, and then she kind of she lives through the encounter with Trudy again, and they kind of get into this conversation. She checks the newspaper date. This is when they're sitting by the turtle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And realizes that they are in 1999, June 1st.
Yeah, that's a big jump.
Yeah,
I didn't think that we were going to wind up in New York at anything close to our present day. Like, I just didn't really think about it. But I can't help but wonder. I mean, I guess 1999 is really before everything tech became, like, so ubiquitous. It's like, there are cell phones, but it's not the same way that it is now, where everybody has one and everybody's cell phone can do crazy shit.
How old were you in 99? 16? 18?
I think I was 15. Okay. I graduated in 2002 and I was 17.
Oh, that's right. You're only a year older than me, right?
Yeah.
Or 2 years, something like that. I was 14, I guess. So I was born in. I was born in. Are you there? I'm here.
Yeah. No, I got you back.
Okay. Yeah, I was saying I was 14. I was born in 85, and I remember, like, those are the days when I remember fucking dial up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
And some of my friends were starting to get cell phones, but I didn't have a cell phone until after I graduated. I definitely was not, And so she's not, in other words, what I'm trying to say is that it isn't as bad a year and as a confusing a year for her as it could have been if this were written later. Mm-hmm. Like, she could be completely out to sea with all kinds of things that she has never seen or can't understand. But it's really just before that stuff takes over entirely.
I mean, it's still 30 years after her time, but it's still it's still vaguely recognizable, which it would not be if she had showed up now.
Yeah, definitely not. I mean, imagine I'm just, just simple things like nobody fucking carries cash anymore. Just simple shit like that would, I feel like would throw you off, or trying to, I don't know, just, there are a lot of things that, I think about how different it was for me as a teenager compared to what it is like for teenagers now. And I realized that I grew up during this insane growth period for tech that is a kind of a very unique period in our history. And it's sort of surreal to remember hanging out in my room with my friends, and I insert us hanging out and looking at our phones into my memories, and that is not what was going on. But that's how that's the context I have now, and I'm applying it to my memories because that's what it feels like we would have been doing, except that no, we just hung out and were bored. That's what we did, except without phones.
It's crazy to think how much has changed in 20 years.
It is.
I mean, it's
kind of surreal sometimes.
If you really sit down and think about it, I actually don't recommend that because you might go insane. Because life is so much different for pretty much everyone, I think. I mean, I don't know. Poverty is still poverty, obviously, but it's a different kind of poverty for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. So in short, she got lucky.
Yeah, she's a 99 here, and she can kind of recognize everything, and the labor is coming back.
Right.
And Susannah has to stop it. And what she does is she closes her eyes and tells Mia to close her eyes. And she says, "Be quiet, I'll be right back." And she goes back to the Dogan. And she essentially sits there and visualizes a series of controls which she can use to control her own body.
This is the coolest.
It is the fucking coolest. So, she's got emotional temp, which I really wanted. Do you have an idea as to why it goes from 32 to 212?
No idea.
Why is that?
No idea.
It seems so random.
I was going to see if it added up to 19, but I didn't actually take the time to do that. Does it?
Oh, no. Absolutely not.
32, 3 and 2 is 5. And then what's the second number?
2. I mean, 212. So
212. So 5 and 2 is 7. And 7 and 1 is 8. And 8 and 2 is 10.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nothing.
Yeah,
I don't know, because I was thinking that I had missed something and that you would tell me, oh, this, and do you remember this? But you don't know either, so I
have no idea. I have no idea why it's 32 to 212. Maybe if anybody out there has an idea of why, let us know. I mean, maybe it's I wonder if it has something to do with actual temperature.
I'm putting in the numbers into Google just to see, and the first thing I get is the Cardone remanufactured smog pump. I'm going to guess that is not related.
Does something crazy happen at 212 degrees Fahrenheit?
Fahrenheit is the freezing point of water, 32, and the boiling point is 212.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
That's what it is.
Cool.
See, that's why Fahrenheit is the dumbest shit. We should use Celsius like the rest of the goddamn world.
Not to mention the fucking metric
absurd
system.
numbers to be working with. How dare we even say anything about Harry Potter's like nuts and galleons system when we're like, what's a great number? 32. Pick that one. What? Why?
Yeah, those are the measurements they use in shithole countries, Natasha.
It's funny because it's terrible and sad.
Yay! Anyway, I'm sorry. I don't know why. That's now I'm depressed. I just made myself depressed.
Let's go back.
Fuck. All right.
And so
Anyway, wow, that's crazy about the temperature thing.
Boiling point.
Boiling point. It's nuts. So then she's got labor force, which I kind of like as a double entendre. Mm-hmm. And that goes from 0 to 10 and is currently at 9. So that's fun.
Yeah, that's excruciating. And for some reason, the way he describes pain in this scene really got to me. And that's something that can be really hard to get across. I don't know what it is about how he wrote it that worked for me, but in Dresden Files, he goes through torture a few times. And there is much more distance for me between the description of it and feeling it. But there's something about the way that he says it here. I think the way that he describes it as like being almost like a wave of nausea combined with like a headache pain. And as somebody who gets horrific migraines that cause me to vomit for 8 to 12 hours at a time, that really felt real. And I was just like, oh, Susannah, I'm so sorry. This is brutal. Oh, also she sees the fucking fetus.
Yeah, so it says chap is the switch, and it toggles between awake and asleep, and it's currently awake. And she sees the baby, and of course his penis. King is careful to remind us that babies have penises. In case we had forgotten. It's this super beautiful kid, and it has Roland's eyes.
Creepy. I don't care for it.
And I
don't know what that's about, but I don't like it, and I want no part of it, and I hope that I never hear that again.
Well, her question is I am visualizing this. This is in my head. Why am I imagining my baby with someone besides my husband's eyes? Mm-hmm. And in particular, the old guy.
Right?
Yeah. So she dials that emotional temperature back down to 72. Gets a little bit more calm. And she switches the baby over to asleep. And then she turns down the labor force, which is a horrible experience. Yes,
it is. Which I was glad of, because if she could just turn that shit down, that would be cheap as hell.
Yeah, yeah.
So she does do it, but at first it won't even move, and then every, what's the respective, I guess? I'm looking for a word here that means every next one, but...
every consecutive?
Consecutive. That's the one. Thank you.
No problem.
But yeah, every consecutive drop there's a correspondingly high rush of pain.
Yeah.
And she thinks that she can just roll it down to 1, and her body's like, lol, no.
Yeah, and I love that, in this picture she's made for herself, this imagining, alarms start to go off.
Yes.
And, motors start, and fans start to turn on, things are heating up. It's great. And a voice that sounds like Blaine is telling her this operation may exceed safety parameters.
Yes, it didn't occur to me that would be a feature, but because this is something that I feel like we as a society just ignore, is that, you can take pain medication and stuff, but your body employs pain as a message delivery system that you are fucking yourself up, and to stop it. And just deciding that you do not want to feel pain is not avoiding harm. It's just you cutting yourself off from that message delivery system. So understandably here, her pain is basically, it is completely immobilizing. So it's totally legit that she wants to turn that shit way down. But I appreciated that her body is basically being like, hey, that might be the worst idea. Just so you know, just letting you know, it's potentially a huge problem. And she just has to kind of weigh it out, whether or not it's worthwhile for now to take the risk. I liked it.
Yeah. I liked it too. I like all of this a great deal. She eventually does turn it down to 2, as you said, and successfully survives the experience, barely.
Right.
And she thinks to herself, when it came to visualization techniques, she had to be the champ of the world. And then that this is more than visualization. And what it says here is, something had changed her, had changed all of them. Jake had gotten the touch, which was a kind of telepathy. Eddie had grown, was still growing, into some sort of ability to create powerful talismanic objects. One of them had already served to open a door between 2 worlds. Mm-hmm. And she? I see, that's all. Except if I see hard enough, it starts to be real. The way Detta Walker got to be real.
Yeah, so, okay, she created this.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And it's great, because the seeds of this shit go so far back. Because you remember her in Lud. How she was looking around Lud, seeing how the city would have been when it was populated.
Oh, yeah, I forgot all about that scene.
Yeah. This visualization is her, like, I don't know, superpower? Or, like, special ability that she's grown? I really like, maybe it's just because I'm a big comic book X-Men guy, but, like, I really dig that the 3 of them have each gotten an ability. Like, a unique thing that they can do.
Yeah, it's something that I like that it came up later in the series.
Yes.
Because I feel like if he tried to do this too early, I'd be like, yeah, all right. Everybody brings their own thing to the table. But the fact that it's been a thing that has popped up, but that they haven't been completely relying on it the whole time, makes it feel a little bit less hokey, maybe is the word.
Well, it's cliched. I mean, I think part of the reason I like it is that I'm really into those kind of stories, like the group of people with different skills come together to do a thing, you know what I mean? This is kind of my jam. It's kind of my jam. But I also, I think that you're right in that if he had brought it in too early, it would have been like, oh, well, this is stupid. Like, this is, like, it would have detracted a little bit from how unique the series felt.
Right.
And with it coming in now, I don't know. I think it works in its favor as opposed to taking away from it.
Yeah, I agree. And it makes and the fact that it creeps up on you like that makes it feel a little bit more shocking when it gets put into bald terms like that, which I feel is how it would be for the characters themselves. It's sort of like when you're doing when you like have some life pattern that you don't see and you're going through this like tough time in your life and your friends are like, you know, you always do this. And you're like, wait, what? And they're like, yeah, here's example 1, 2, 3, 8, 12, 24. And you're like, oh, okay, I get it.
Right.
But you just never sat down and like actually looked at the cold hard data of your decisions.
And I feel like you can even like, you can draw Jake getting the touch as much as I feel like it was kind of a rushed decision and like it feels so, and we've talked about this, how it's like all of a sudden Jake has the touch and like nobody really is surprised.
Right.
And, you know, it just kind of comes out of nowhere and is like a thing that's happened. But again, if like, you know, kind of what we were talking about earlier, where it's like if you try to make sense out of these things, you can in your mind, but you could read into the events that led him into coming through the door that Eddie opened into Midworld.
Right.
You could read that as like, okay, it kind of makes sense that of all the characters, this one might be telepathic.
Yeah, so that's true. That's fair.
So,
Yeah, I guess I'll go.
it still feels fucking cheap to me.
I'm
but like,
grumbling a little bit, but it's all right.
I'm with you. It still feels cheap, but like, I can see it.
Is that where it ends?
No,
That happens right before. Oh, she tries to project out to Eddie, right?
Yeah, she imagines a microphone.
Yeah, which is super fun.
It has a semicircular tricolored readout with the words Susannah Mio printed below it.
Yeah, what's that about? Why not Mia?
The only reference to it that I recall was the song that was, or not the song, the graffiti that was on the fence in the vacant lot where the rose was, which was, "Oh, Susannah Mio, divided girl of mine, done parked her rig in the Dixie Pig in the year of '99."
That's right, I forgot about that.
Yeah, so you know,
All right.
three of those things kind of make sense now.
Oh my god, you know what I'm wondering? If she can create things by thinking about them, could she have just created this baby that doesn't actually exist?
Oh,
Except that now it does.
that's crazy. I don't know. I mean, I do, but I don't.
I hate you. But I don't. But I do. But I
you
don't.
So yeah, she sends kind of a really sweet message to Eddie, telling him what's going on. And then she goes back because Mia opens her eyes.
Right.
And
And
Mia
Mia's
tries
just about to bounce out of there.
Yeah, Mia is feeling much better thanks to Susannah almost killing herself. Thank you. And tries to stand up, and Susannah's like, "Nope, sit the fuck
I
down."
enjoyed the idea of watching somebody who has 3 personalities all telling them to do different things. Like, imagine how nuts this looks from the outside.
Right.
Watching her, like, stand and then very abruptly sit and then look mad and frustrated, probably. Like,
Oh my God.
what is happening?
We just Sharon and I and one of our friends recently rewatched the long story as to why we actually went and found it, but we rewatched an old episode of The Daily Show from the Obama-Romney election.
Oh, wow.
And it was when they went to the RNC and Clint Eastwood did his thing at the RNC.
I
With,
forgot about that whole thing. Oh, my God. The one with the chair.
with the chair, yeah. and Stuart says, "You know, in our studios here, in Hell's Kitchen in New York, you don't have to go far to find someone yelling at an inanimate object, or an old man yelling at an inanimate object. But very rarely is that inanimate object on stage at a national political convention, and almost never is that old man Oscar winner Clint Eastwood."
Oh,
That just reminds
God,
me of
was
that. It's
so
like-
embarrassing.
The people you see that, like, you know, on the street that seem crazy, like, who knows? Maybe they're saving the world and they have another personality that's kind of supernaturally pregnant inside them. You don't know.
Yep. Yeah, I actually said that once when I was little to my mom. There was somebody walking by and they were talking, and I was like, who are they talking to? My mom's like, oh, they think there's somebody there, but there's not. And I was like, well, what if there is somebody there and we just can't see them?
Yeah.
And my mom was just like, all right, honey. It's like, it was a combination of, you're a child, shut up, and also, I just don't want to think about anything that's, like, uncomfortable right now. I've had enough today. Thank you.
Strangely, Natasha did not become one of those people who dismisses UFO stories out of hand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when she's talking as Detta, she's talking out loud, right? I think, and
Yeah,
Detta is
yeah,
like
yeah.
freaking out this poor woman who's pushing her carriage through she's got a stroller, and she crosses by just as Detta is telling this woman, "I know you're worried about the chap, and Susannah cares about him a little bit, but I don't give a shit."
Oh,
she's so good. I hate her,
love it.
but she's great when she needs to be around. You just don't want anyone else.
I know. It's like sometimes you just need Detta Walker to show up, man.
Yep.
So Mia is trying, as you said, to like go do her business, and Susannah's like, no. Now that we're both, neither of us are dying or about to go into labor right now, we're gonna sit down and we're gonna fucking talk.
Yep.
So let's start by telling me what you're doing.
I think I lost you again.
Are you there? Can you hear me now?
Yep, there you go. Okay, you said
Right,
sit down and fucking talk, and that was when I lost you.
Yeah. So she starts off by saying, like, what are you actually planning on doing? Like, what's your plan here? To which Mia says, I need a telephone.
Oh my god. And thank you, Susannah, for asking the question I had, which immediately was, how the fuck does she know what a phone is?
Yeah.
And obviously she doesn't really because she's saying it wrong, but like, what?
Yeah, because Susannah is basically saying, look, you fucking need me more than you ever did before. Because you're walking around with a bloodstained shirt and some razor-sharp discs in a stolen bag, and you need to find a telephone, but you don't really know what it is.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, she kind of gave herself away a little bit with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just by mispronouncing it.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. So again, Mia keeps trying to kind of, pick up and leave, and finally, Detta is the one that comes out, like you said. And, like, I don't know, I really want to read this, but I'm not sure I should. Do you want to read her thing?
Oh, God. No, you go for it.
You want me to do it? All right.
I'd be prepared, though. Everybody, if you have an email to send it to Miles and not to me.
Please,
Go ahead.
please direct your angry tweets at Natasha Writing on Twitter. That's my Twitter account. So, all right.
Lol.
I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit about Ka, and you best be remembering that. You got problems, girl. Got a rug monkey coming. You don't know what it is. Got folks say they'll help you, and you don't know what they are. Shit, you don't even know what telephone is or where to find one. Now we gonna sit here, and you gonna tell me what happens next. We gonna palaver, girl, and if you don't play straight, we still be sitting here with these bags come nightfall, and you can have your precious chap on this bench and wash him off in the fucking fountain.
Damn, son.
And once again, like you said, you care about that chap, and Susannah, she care a little bit about that chap, but I've been mostly turned out of this body, and I don't give a shit.
So good.
Oh,
I really
so
do just
much.
love that so much.
I know, me too. It's
I don't give a shit.
It's like it's this weird fist pump moment where you're like, I think it's so great because like Susannah has felt so much, not like a victim, but like just dragged around and manipulated and lied to and not in control and not even like a main fucking character for so long. And this is the scene where you're like, oh, that's right. You don't fuck with her.
The thing for me is, even beyond being frustrated with how I felt Susannah's been given short shrift as a character, I just wanted somebody to step in and take absolute control of the situation.
Yes.
Even if and there's something to be said for like the herd mentality, where even if it's a bad leader, a leader is better than none.
Yeah.
It's like, Detta is dangerous and impulsive and violent, but watching Mia and Susannah fight over her body and go back and forth, like, it's especially when they're in the middle of an emergency, it's like watching people argue when the fire alarm is going off about which door to go out of. And there's a fire. Just go, for Christ's sake. But they're both like, just committed to their side of things. And finally, Detta just comes in and bashes an opening in the wall and is like, that way, go now. And you're like, thank you. Oh, I couldn't stand listening to them bicker anymore. So thank you, Detta, for taking the situation in hand. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's definitely, that's great. But again, for me, so much of it is also just like, okay, like, you know, finally Susannah's doing something.
Yeah, true.
Like, she
That
gets to do something.
Absolutely a part of it.
She gets to have some fucking, like, control over what her character arc is. It's great. I love this whole thing. You know, like, I remember thinking to myself, like, this was the point where I was like, okay, like, I don't like this baby storyline. I never have. I'm not gonna like it. But it's looking like a decent, at least, you know, not the worst version of it. Like, at least I'm getting, at least Susannah as a character hasn't been completely compromised for the sake of the storyline, which happens to female characters in fiction all the fucking time. And at least she and Detta are still there doing their thing, you know? It makes it feel like it fits better. It makes it feel more like part of the story, because you see Susannah there, and she's still the same character. She's dealing with this new situation, but it's recognizably her throughout this entire chapter.
And, you know, not for nothing, and it's not just Susannah, all of the other people, it seems like, will fly out of control, and it's Roland that brings them back and sobers them up and gets them to fucking focus.
Yeah.
It's not just her, but it's really nice for her to have a moment where she can do that for herself, in a way.
Yeah.
In a very strange sort of, like, still feels like a totally different person doing it sort of way, but still, she did not require outside help exactly. And it feels almost like, in that sense, she has a little bit of an advantage over Eddie and Jake, where they kind of just have to think, what would Roland say to me right now? And use that as like a steadying presence. Whereas she has somebody who can actually, like, step up into her brain and take it over. And it's sort of nice to see that. It's like a weird autonomy, because, like I said, it does feel like a different person.
Yeah. I don't know. I love it. I think it's great. And that's the end of the chapter, basically.
Yeah, that's it. It felt really fast when I read it.
Yeah, it's like Detta sits her down and says, "We're talking now. Shut up." Mm-hmm. So, I was gonna say something else, but I don't remember what it was. I like that little pause there was me like, yeah, I was gonna what was that point? I don't know. I lost it.
Like sand through your fingers.
Yup. Oh, I was gonna ask you if you thought that, like, in a way, it's a weird kind of like a dude thing. Like, Eddie and Jake kind of fall in line more easily behind Roland.
No, because, like, I still think she falls in line behind Roland. She resents him just a little, I think, and that's the Detta part of her still hanging around and being irritated. But she still listens, and she still, like, sees the value in what he does as a leader for them. I just really enjoy that she has the ability to do that for herself as well.
Yeah.
Despite it being a potentially self-destructive one.
Yeah, I can see that. All right. I'm just curious.
Well, I'm going to wrap this thing up then.
Let's do it.
I have a couple announcements. First of all, as you may have noticed, my website is still down. I am working on it. I have a friend who's helping me out with it. Hi, Krista. And
Hi, Krista.
We have come up with a sort of temporary solution that we're going to try and put in place by the end of this week. And so the site will be up technically, but the content is going to be pretty much gone. So I'm going to have to rebuild it all, and I need you all to bear with me on that, because it is going to be a long and tedious process. So, sorry. I know a lot of people have been trying to use my Amazon link, which, because my site is down and my URL is not working, my Amazon link is not working. And all I can tell you is that if you use any of the links that I have posted to different items on Amazon from my Facebook page, you'll still be giving Unspoiled the credit for it. I'm really sorry for the abrupt change, everybody, but right as I was recording, I suddenly lost Miles, and then Miles texted me and said that his internet is down. We waited for about 20 minutes and it still hasn't come back. So we decided that we were just going to go ahead and wrap up for this week's episode. And I would just tag on my own little ending without Miles. So that's why he's not here, and I'm sorry. Hopefully next week his internet will be functional again and we will be able to pick up where we left off. And Miles asked me to please plug his projects. So I'm going to do that really quickly. I think that you guys probably know about Smash Fiction Podcast, which is a podcast where the two teams, which are different teams every week, they try and mix it up. They pit two fictional characters against one another. And it is really fun. I guested on one episode and it was a blast to do. And you can find that one at smashfictionpodcast.libsyn.com. And then the other podcast that Miles has just started recently is called the Odyssey Storytelling Podcast. And that is a series of short stories. They're not very long episodes. And if you are interested in that, as he mentioned earlier, that Haunted Pizza Hut story, you can find that on the Odyssey Storytelling Podcast at odysseystorytelling.libsyn.com. I believe it's episode 8 called Haunted from October of last year. So anyway, those are Miles' things. I will just once again remind y'all to like us on Facebook, facebook.com/unspoiledpod, on Twitter at Unspoiled Show, Instagram at Unspoiled Podcast. And thank you all for bearing with us in our tech difficulties, and we will see you next week with He Says to Read. He texted me 2 more chapters. So, see you next week with Dos Mas. Toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.